Welcome back to Destination Pro Wrestling. In this video, we have some incredible news. AEW possibly buying ROH. What that really means, there's conflicting reports. I want to put in my 2 cents. Also, AEW being placed on HBO Max. This is something I've been talking about for years at this point. So there's a lot of talks of it happening. Tony Schiavone also chimed in. We're going to talk about that. Also, WWE 205 Live original plans were revealed. And I think this is a major topic in today's video because it's going to really specify, and I mean, it's a specific thing that we got to take a look at because I think it shows the reason why WWE is the way it is. And we got to have that conversation. So if you guys want more videos like this, you already know what to do. Drop a comment, click subscribe, all that good stuff. And if you're an existing viewer, I just want to say thank you again because we're getting closer and closer to 30,000. Because of you, we're growing. Let's talk about 205 Live. Tony Nese came out with some very interesting comments. He was on the Chris Van Vliet podcast. He expressed his frustration with basically everything that had to do with 205 Live because there was a team filled with hungry and incredibly talented wrestlers only to be given no support. And basically, he speculates that Triple H had a completely different vision for 205 Live. There was talks of them doing a yearly tournament similar to the Cruiserweight Classic that we saw. There was also talks of 205 Live really just being like, more sports-like content. You're probably wondering where you've heard that before, AEW. But 205 Live was planned to be something much bigger than it was. Then, as you know, 205 Live roster members got moved up to Monday Night Raw, and that's when Triple H essentially took over 205 Live. Then Tony Nese also speculates at some point Vince McMahon gave it back to Triple H, which Triple H, I think the words in this article were they were tainted. So just to put that in perspective, like the 205 Live brand at that point was already tarnished. Vince McMahon took over, didn't care about it, didn't do anything with it. And then you have 205 Live going back to Triple H. And now here we are with 205 Live not even really being a cruiserweight show. There guys like Odyssey Jones. If you watch NXT 2.0, this guy's over like 300 pounds and he's wrestling on 205 Live. So my point that I'm making is at this point, 205 Live is just more content for WWE on Peacock. That's what it is. And that's why I think WWE's in the predicament that they are right now. They're in the content game. And I'll get into this later with AEW, but with streaming rights and television deals and all this stuff, WWE has to have a quota filled with content going to the network. WWE is also, and I'm going to talk about this in a little bit, WWE has no incentive to really buy ROH the more I think about it because WWE gets paid a flat fee for the WWE network on Peacock. So getting more subscribers is no longer the goal for WWE. Maybe for Peacock it is, but not for WWE. So 205 Live is pretty much, we all knew this was going to happen, but it pretty much came out the way it happened. And sadly, a whole bunch of talented people pretty much got screwed, which is kind of like the normal thing that we hear in WWE. Also, AEW on HBO Max. This is something that I've been talking about for years, even before the launch of AEW. Obviously, it's been well documented. So if you guys don't know, maybe we'll get into a podcast or something explaining why I believe this was always the case. But also at the same time, too, we just saw some comments. Tony Schiavone, I think this was on Fightful. Yeah, it was on Fightful. Fightful basically transcribed this interview. Basically what happened was Tony Schiavone was talking to somebody in the front office, and he didn't ask Tony Khan, but he asked somebody, and he said, are we going to be on HBO Max? Because at this point, Tony Schiavone have already heard from other people that AEW was going to launch a streaming service or be on HBO Max by the end of next year. So essentially, he asked this question, and the person that Tony Schiavone asked said, doubt it until they want to come up with a lot more money. So I think we're going to end up getting our own streaming service. Now, here's the thing. I have been talking a long time about AEW going to HBO Max, and it makes more sense than AEW launching their own streaming platform. And I think AEW launching their own streaming platform, even by the end of 2020, 2022, it's a disastrous idea. Streaming services, there's too many. too many streaming services. So if you have your major networks, you have your Fox with Tubi, you have Disney with, Hulu and ESPN Plus and Disney Plus, right? And then you have AT&T, which is Warner Media, which is now being merged with Discovery Bros. Well, it's going to be called Discovery Bros, but they're being merged with Discovery Plus. So then that's going to be all one network as well. You have all of these different global conglomerates that are going to own subsidiaries, and you put them together as a package. AEW should be on HBO Max. HBO Max should just simply have AEW Video on Demand. On top of that, AEW Video on Demand tells me that that should also be the place for pay-per-views, similar to how ESPN Plus works. Because from what I was always told, HBO Max really, they are in a lot of households, but you got to look at it how AEW is in a lot of households as well. It doesn't mean you're getting a lot of people watching the content. HBO Max is given to a lot of people because it's part of the AT&T unlimited plans. That doesn't mean people use it. Now, of course, if AEW were to launch a streaming service by itself, it would probably do decent based on the fact that they do about 200,000 pay-per-view buys. But if you put them on HBO Max, it's now available to 70 million people if they choose to tune in. Food for thought, that's why these rumors of AEW buying ROH are so significant. Because there are rumors that AEW is buying ROH. There's also rumors that ROH is no longer putting their tape library for sale. The reason why this is so incredibly important is because of a couple different reasons, right? We were talking about HBO Max. We're talking about WWE Network on Peacock. WWE has no incentive to bring in the ROH tape library for Peacock. Now, NBC Universal has every incentive to do that because they want to increase their subscribers. You can add ROH to it. Technically, WWE doesn't own it, but NBC, obviously owning that footage would be pretty big for the Peacock network because, again, Peacock does offer sports and wrestling. Then you have AEW, who I think if they are on HBO Max, I think having the ROH tape library would be massive. Now, don't forget, there's something called Honor Club. And one of the biggest things I've learned about being a wrestling fan is AEW does not have enough content to support its own streaming service. And if you just combine Honor Club with AEW On Demand, I don't think that's unique enough either. But I think if AEW were to purchase it, obviously they get all in. They get all of the ROH stuff. They can now do documentaries, very similar to what WWE does on Peacock. Now you have a ton of content that you could present on HBO Max, and you got more eyes on the product. Anybody who says AEW shouldn't be on HBO Max is like, they probably just don't want to see the company grow, because I just can't imagine why you wouldn't want a library that is accessible by 70 million people. And that's what it's come down to. Another thing that I want to mention very briefly, the reports of AEW being very, very interested are deemed to be true. However, that report is coming from, I believe, Sports Illustrated. Now you have other sources who have come out and said, no, ROH is not interested in selling its tape library, and that's it. So we don't know where we're really at with this situation, but AEW buying ROH would be the most logical, and I'm very interested to see what happens. Anyways, guys, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time right here on DPW.